Welcome everyone to India's largest learning platform, Unacademy. Sorry, there was delay in the class because of some technical issues. So you can subscribe to Unacademy and become a part of Unacademy family. And after subscription, you can enjoy many benefits like attending daily live classes, evaluating your performance through live tests and quizzes, attending structured courses of Unacademy, and also you get unlimited access to the platform through which you can see live and recorded courses. You get a chance to prepare with 100% top educators of the country, including Mrunal Patel sir and Roman Saini sir. For UPSC CSE subscription, you can you can subscribe from 1 month to 36 month as per your requirement. Subscription fees for 1 year is 49,500, 2 year is 72,000, 3 year is 90,000. But you can use my code AJ01 and get 10% off. Similarly, you can go for Iconic subscription. It is available for 1, 2 and 3 year. 1 year Iconic subscription is 69500, 2 year is 1,07,000, 3 year is 1,41,000. Use AJ01 and get 10% off on Iconic subscription. There is also an early introductory offer till 31st October, under which if you subscribe for GS courses, you get optional courses free of cost. After 31st October, you have to pay 27,500 rupees separately for the optional. Again here use code AJ01 and get 10% off. These are 18 optional presently being offered on Unacademy, including 4 literature optional: Maithili, Hindi, Kannada and English literature. I am Ashpal Janma and qualified for UPSC mains 2 times, RS examination finally qualified 3 times, 3 to 5 years of teaching experience. Join me on my Telegram channel and follow me on Unacademy. So let's start today's class. GS paper 2 live and answer writing session. Now we have conducted, so far we have conducted live answer writing session on GS paper 1. There was one session. GS 2, we are going to conduct 2 sessions. So in 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. Session on part 1 has already been conducted. This is part 2. So let us directly take mains examination paper 2019 and start our class without any further bol bachan. Basically GS paper 2 is divided into 3 parts: Indian Constitution and Polity, second is governance, third is welfare and social justice, and fourth is international relations. So we will take question from each part and try to understand how to answer. So let us take question number 9. Question up to 8, question up to serial number 8 has already been taken in the class. So I am starting with question number 9. The time has come for India and Japan to build a strong contemporary relationship, one involving global and strategic partnership that will have a great significance for Asia and world as a whole. Comment. So basically question is about the relation between India and Japan. It is talking about that we should have a relation which should have a great significance for Asia and world. So basically that is international relation question, IR question. So how to start? What should be main part of the answer? What should be conclusion? We will see. So in introduction, since the question is about relation between India and Japan. So we will talk about history of relation between India and Japan. So history of relation, we have a long history of relation, spiritual, cultural and civilization aspect. We have a long tradition of relation. Buddhism is preached and practiced in Japan, and the birthplace of Buddhism is in India. So in that sense, we have spiritual, cultural and civilization relation. So traditionally, we are related with each other, especially in these three spheres. Presently, what is situation of relation between India and Japan? So recently, we have signed special strategic and global partnership. It is a kind of agreement which was signed between India and Japan, and this agreement indicates that India and Japan are strategic partners. Such agreements are quite significant in international sphere. So recently concluded agreement. Also, our relation is most rapidly advancing relationship in Asia. We have got many new areas of interest, especially reforming United Nations Security Council. Both of us wants to be member of United Nations Security Council. Maritime security again a big issue because China's assertiveness, dispute of China in South China Sea. We both want maritime security because India is having Indian Ocean, Japan is surrounded by sea. So both of us wants more maritime security. Climate change is another issue where our interests get converged. So we want climate negotiation going smoothly. We want regional cooperation because both are Asian countries. Also, stability and security in Indo-Pacific region. These are some of the new area of interest between India and Japan. Also, our interests are getting converged because of assertiveness of China, especially in South China Sea. Also, if you might have heard about Asia Pivot Doctrine. Asia Pivot is because of assertiveness of China or leading role and assertive role played by China in Asia. So USA, Australia, China, USA, Australia, Japan, this country are seeing India as a prominent player who can stop China. So that Asia Pivot Doctrine are also is one angle in India-Japan relation. Also, they want to recalibrate the balance of power in Asia because in Asia, China is emerging as a leading player. So, Japan wants someone, a strong country like India, who can balance the power. So, these are some of the aspects we will be talking in introduction. So, relation, past relation, present relation, also future relation or new areas of interest. It will be our introduction. One more thing, you can draw always in international relation maps question, you can always draw a world map. Let's draw here. We don't have much space. Japan is almost here. So you can draw a world map like this and indicate Japan and India. India and Japan, and show that you are talking about India and Japan. A small map showing the India and Japan. So history of relationship, spiritual, cultural and civilization aspect, present relation. Yes, we have recently concluded strategic and global partnership. Our relationship is advancing. We have got new areas of interest. For example, both of us wants to be member of United Nations Security Council. We want maritime security because both our countries are surrounded by ocean. Climate negotiation, regional cooperation, stability and security in Indo-Pacific region. Also, we want to counter assertiveness of China and balance of power with the help of India. Now, in main part of the answer, let us talk about the areas of cooperation between India and Japan. Which are the area where we are cooperating, or where is scope for cooperation? So first will be obviously economic, second will be security and defense cooperation, then various organizations and groups in which both India and Japan are member nations, other areas of cooperation in Indo-Pacific region, and conclusion. So let us talk about economic cooperation. Whenever we'll talk about economic cooperation about any two nations, we talk about bilateral trade. So bilateral trade between India and Japan is $15 billion in 2017. We will write about key facts only. FDI investment. Japan is third largest FDI investor in India. Now these data are coming from where? These data are coming from economic survey. So you need to have a summarized data for every portion including international relations, because data is must in GS answers. With the help of data your answer looks complete, so you need data. Economic survey can be useful in especially in IR and economy portion. So FDI, third largest FDI investor. Also Japanese, various Japanese projects are there in India. You can talk about Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor, $19 billion project with the assistance of Japan. Delhi Metro project, Ahmedabad Mumbai high speed rail project with the help of Japan. So various Japan projects are there in India. Western dedicated freight corridor, it is also being implemented with the help of Japan. JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency. If you might have heard about name of this agency is running various projects in all the various state of India. These projects are there in power, energy, agriculture, rural and urban development sectors, and scope of cooperation. Now this answer is looking very detailed, so you need not to be write all these points, but whatever, it is just an indicative answer. So whatever is coming to your mind or whatever you can recall, you should write. Also further scope for cooperation in future where we can cooperate. Japan is coming with a project about Asia Africa Growth Corridor, which is $200 billion project. Here India can participate. Also Northeast Road Network Connectivity Improvement Project. Now India is having Act East policy, which is a major policy of in international sphere So to help that policy, Japan is having a project, Northeast Road Connectivity Improvement Project. India can participate in these two projects. So economy scenario, first bilateral trade, $15 billion, FDI, third largest source of FDI, various Japanese project on India. So whatever name you are able to recall, at least name, remember 2-3 major names like Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor, Delhi Metro Project, and Western Dedicated Freight Corridor. These three name you can recall. Also you can write about JICA, that JICA is running various projects in India. Future scope of cooperation, Japan is coming with a big project known as Asia Africa Growth Corridor of $200 billion. So you can quote that project. And keeping in mind India's Act East policy, Northeast Road Connectivity Improvement Project, you can quote this project. So these are areas of cooperation in economy and scope for cooperation. Now what should be scope for improvement? So whatever areas of cooperation you are talking about, always write scope of improvement. Now what is scope for improvement? Our bilateral trade is only $15 billion. Now bilateral trade between Japan and China is $300 billion. So our trade is only 5% of trade between Japan and China. So you can quote that example, that our bilateral trade is Miagre only, very less. So we need to work on that particular. So in every area of cooperation, always write scope for improvement. It will make your answer complete. So first is scope for area of cooperation, economy. Second, security and defense cooperation. Now in security and defense cooperation, if you remember, if you are reading current affair continuously, there was nuclear deal concluded between India and Japan in 2017. That was the first nuclear deal concluded by Japan with a non-signatory of non-proliferation treaty. India has not signed NPT. So it became first country with whom Japan has signed a nuclear deal. So it was a major achievement. So right, you should note now in IR diary or IR notes, when you are writing about India Japan relation, all important datas, facts, these important treaties, you need to compile at one place so that you can directly use it. Now it is, since it is one of the major treaty not only in India and Japan relation but major nuclear treaty looking at the world also, so you need to compile all this data at one place in India and Japan relation. Similarly you can have India and USA relation, India and France relation, and compile all the data relevant to India and USA or India and France at one place, that can be readily used in your answer. This is how you write good answers. So India Japan nuclear deal 2017. Also we have got 2+2 dialogue forum between foreign and defense ministers. So our foreign ministers and defense ministers, they have a regular system of dialogue which is known as 2+2. 2 means foreign minister and defense minister of India, plus 2 means foreign minister and defense minister of Japan. So we have dialogue forum on security and defense cooperation. Now what is scope for improvement? There is a huge scope in civilian and defense cooperation, so we can work on that particular aspect. So second area of cooperation, security and defense. Now third, organization of groups. Here you need to write about all those groups where both India and Japan are member nations. For example, we are member of G4 group, What is G4 group? G4 group is group which is seeking reform in United Nations. So these four countries, Brazil, Germany, India and Japan, they want to become permanent member of United Nations Security Council. So that is a common area of interest. So member of G4. Recently, India has become a member of Quad, or an informal organization which is there to counter China, or which wants stability in Indo-Pacific region. Now Quad group, both India and Japan are member. India, Japan, Australia and USA, these are four members. So you can write about G4, Quad, G20. So write all the groups which you are able to recall about where both India and Japan are members. Also G20 areas of scope for improvement, you can write that there is a huge scope for convergence. So both should proactively participate. Both should proactively participate in negotiation and meeting of this group, and should strive for to meet their area of convergence. In this way, there is a scope for improvement. Now let us talk about other areas. So we have a scope for improvement in culture, scope for cooperation in cultural aspect, people to people exchange program. We can mimic best practices of each other. We can cooperation in soft diplomacy, cooperation in Asia, because both of them are Asian countries. Now cooperation in Indo-Pacific, why? Because we both are surrounded by oceans, so we want freedom of navigation. And then freedom of navigation is recently got disturbed because of China's assertiveness. Like China is having claiming a large area of South China Sea. China is claiming that a large area of South China Sea is Chinese part. So we want freedom of navigation. We cannot tolerate such practices. So in this area we can cooperate. With our interest of convergence can be India's Act East policy, and this is Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. India want Act East policy is a major policy of India in international relation. Japan want free and open Indo-Pacific region. So that is area of cooperation. We can also cooperate in groups like ASEAN, ASEAN plus 5 and ASEAN plus 7. At the end, you will write conclusion where you will write that the partnership between India and Japan has been a traditional partnership, and since we have got many area of convergence, so we should strive hard to engage all the future opportunities. So how you have written your answer? Introduction, you talked about history of relation, you talked about present relation and future of relation, where new area of interest were talked about you. Now in areas of cooperation, in main part of answer, economic cooperation, also scope for improvement, security and defense cooperation, organization and groups where both country are members, other areas, Indo-Pacific cooperation, and at the end conclusion. So this is how you write your answer. Now moving forward, question number 10. Too little cash and too much politics leaves UNESCO fighting for life. Discuss the statement in the light of US withdrawal and its accusation of cultural body as being anti-Israel bias. 10 marker question. Now recently UNESCO was in news because USA has decided that we withdraw our membership of UNESCO and we will not give fund to UNESCO. That's why it was there in the news. So the question is entirely current based question. So how you write your answer? Similarly, introduction, body and conclusion. Since question is about UNESCO, so you will write about UNESCO. So formation, why the body was set up, important programs of UNESCO, which are important program of UNESCO. This will be discussed in introduction. So UNESCO is United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. It is body of a specialized agency of United Nations. Formation 1945. Why the body was set up? For peace building, especially in these three area. Which are the area? Educational, scientific and cultural program. So building peace in through educational, scientific and cultural programs. Now various important programs of UNESCO. So UNESCO has got many programs like World Heritage Sites and World Heritage Convention. There is also in field of environment, there is main and biosphere program of UNESCO. UNESCO is also having creative cities network. UNESCO is also having intangible cultural heritage cities of the world, intangible cultural heritage program of the world. Also various reports are also being issued by UNESCO. So in a whole, various important programs are being run by UNESCO. Why you're talking about UNESCO in introduction? Because if a major country, which is USA, if USA comes out of UNESCO and cut its budget or do not pay money to UNESCO, this activity will get disturbed, they will get interrupted. So in introduction, we will talk about UNESCO. What is UNESCO? A specialized agency of United Nations. Formation 1945. Why it was set up? For peace building. Important programs of UNESCO. World Heritage Site, we all know. UNESCO's main in biosphere program. Also UNESCO's Creative Cities Network. And intangible cultural heritage. UNESCO also issue various reports. So these things you can write in your introduction. Now moving forward. Now the question is about politicization of UNESCO and lack of funds. It is our main part of the question. So let us talk about it. So what USA has done so far? Recently USA has decided to withdraw its membership and funding. So USA will no more be a member of UNESCO and will not fund various activities of UNESCO. Now how UNESCO is being funded? So there are two kind of funding to UNESCO. One is compulsory funding. Second is donation. So countries like USO are giving compulsory funding to UNESCO. There are many countries and organizations which are giving donation to UNESCO. Now what happens? Those countries who are giving funding to UNESCO or money to UNESCO, they want to use UNESCO in their favor. Now what happened recently? Many actions of UNESCO. For example, UNESCO declared Palestine as full-time member, included Palestine as full-time member. Also, some disputed area between Israel and Palestine were declared as a World Heritage Site. So because of these actions of UNESCO, USA has seen UNESCO being anti-Israel. That's why USA decided to withdraw from UNESCO. So basically what this donor country or this country who are paying funding to UNESCO or paying money to UNESCO, they want this body to work in their favor. The moment this body take some neutral decision, they withdraw from membership or they do not pay fund to UNESCO. That is the issue. So that is politicization of UNESCO. So why USA decided to stop funding and withdraw from membership? Because UNESCO admitted Palestine as a full-time member state. Palestine is has dispute with Israel. Israel is a friend of USA. So it was taken as an anti-Israel decision. Also, UNESCO also criticized Israel's occupation of East Jerusalem. This decision was also not appreciated by USA. UNESCO named ancient Jewish site at Palestine as a heritage site, which was disputed. Now, is it the first time that USA has decided to withdraw from UNESCO? No, it is in 1984 when Ronald Reagan was president of USA. He withdrew from UNESCO, citing UNESCO favoring Russia and anti-Israel. So in past also USA has done this kind of activities. So basically these developed nations are using these international agencies in their favor. Let us talk about Japan, how Japan is participating in politicization of UNESCO. Recently, Japan has threatened to withhold fund over issue of 1937 Nanjing massacre. So, whenever UNESCO is doing some action which are not going favor in these countries, these are country are threatening UNESCO that we will not pay fund to you. Russia over Crimea issue. Other countries like UK and other European nations, they also do not give funding timely. Now, how recent decision of USA will impact UNESCO? UNESCO has a staff of 2000 employee. There are 2000 employee working in UNESCO. Because of lesser funding, there will be cut in budget. So important initiatives of UNESCO, be it World Heritage Site, Main and Biosphere Program, Creative Cities Network, Intangible Cultural Heritage Program, these all programs are likely to get affected because to conduct, sponsor and uh, continue this program, they need funding. Now there is, if there is lack of funds, so this program will get affected. Now in conclusion, what you are going to write in conclusion, you will write that we need grassroots level reform in India, in UNSC, to depoliticized to depoliticization of the institution. Because if international organizations like UNESCO, if they are working in favor of some nations, it won't be good for entire world. So in this way you can conclude your answer. So how we have written our answer? First we talked about UNESCO. It's which kind of agency it is, a specialized agency of UN formation, why it was set up, an important program of UNESCO. Main part of uh, answer, we talked about politicization of UNESCO, where how USA, Japan, Russia, and other countries are using UNESCO and causing trouble, and how this withdrawal of USA and lack of funding will impact UNESCO. And at the end we write conclusion, where we offered a way forward that there should be grassroots level reform to depoliticize UNESCO. That is our second question. Moving forward, question number 12. Parliament's power to amend the constitution is a limited power, and it cannot be enlarged into absolute power. In the light of this statement, explain whether Parliament under Article 368 of the Constitution can destroy basic structure of the Constitution by expanding its amending power. 15 marker. So the question is about Article 368. Article 368 is about amendment of Indian Constitution. Now the question is saying whether Indian Parliament amend Article 368 in all possible way, or can Indian Parliament use Article 368 in all possible way so that it can amend any part of Constitution and destroy basic structure of Constitution, destroy basic structure of Indian Constitution. Can it be done? So obviously it cannot be done, because as per Supreme Court judgment, basic structure cannot be amended by Parliament. So how you will write your answer? Similar introduction, body and conclusion. Basically question is about Article 368 and amendment power of Parliament. So you will talk about these two things and basic structure. So you will talk about these three things in your introduction. Article 368 is what? It provides power of Parliament to amend the Constitution by addition, variation and repealation in accordance with the procedure laid by law. Now Parliament do not have arbitrary power to amend any part of Constitution. It can amend the Constitution as per procedure laid by law. Okay, so basically it has limited power to amend the Constitution. Now amendment like 42nd Amendment and 25th Amendment, these two amendments were misuse of Article 368, where the Parliament amended federal structure, they restrained civil liberties, and in some way misuse Article 368. Now after these amendments, especially after 42nd Amendment, Parliament came with concept of basic structure, and as per this concept of basic structure, they gave a decision that Parliament has limited power to amend the Constitution. Parliament can amend any part of Constitution but not basic structure. So present status is what? According to Article 368, Parliament can amend any part of Constitution but cannot amend basic structure. That is present status. So in introduction you talked about Article 368, what it is, amendments where Parliament has misused this article, and what is basic structure. So that will be your introduction. Now main part of the answer, since the question is about basic structure, so we will talk about evolution of basic structure, what is significance of basic structure, and what is parts of basic structure, what consists of basic structure. So evolution, various Supreme Court judgment, and most important judgment is Keshwanand Bharti judgment of 1973. In this case, Supreme Court came up with the idea of basic structure, that basic structure is soul of Indian constitution which cannot be taken away, cannot be amended. Now similarly in Minerva Mill case versus Union of India 1980, the parliament said same thing again, that basic structure of constitution cannot be amended. This decision was repeated in Chandra Kumar case versus Union of India in 1997, that basic structure cannot be amended. So you have to quote various Supreme Court decisions, especially Keshwanand Bharti, where the idea was came into force, and other judgment where Supreme Court has said that basic structure cannot be amended. So that is about evolution of basic structure. Now what is significance of basic structure, why it is there in why it is uh, there in Indian constitution, or why Supreme Court has given various decision in favor of basic structure? Because it protects right of minorities and vulnerable section. Because if you provide unlimited power to the parliament to amend any part of constitution, so parliament can take decision where minority rights can be taken away, so to protect minority right, also to balance between rigidity and flexibility. What is rigidity? Rigidity is cannot be amended, that Indian constitution cannot be amended. What is flexibility? Entire Indian constitution can be amended. Entire constitution can be amended. So this basic structure is basically having a balance between rigidity and flexibility, where it is saying that yes, Indian constitution can be amended, but parliament will have limited power. It also prevents concentration of power. Imagine a situation where Indian parliament has become all powerful, can amend any part. Now there come a government which is dictator in network, dictatorship tendencies. So suppose they are taking away fundamental right to life or fundamental life to liberty, because parliament, if given power to amend any part of constitution, they can take away any fundamental right. They can also extend tenure of Lok Sabha. Suppose general tenure of Lok Sabha is 5 years, they are extending tenure of Lok Sabha to 10 years, then 15 years as per their convenience. So these arbitrary tendencies, to avoid all this concentration of power, this basic structure can be used. So to protect the right of minorities, to have a healthy balance between rigidity and flexibility, and to prevent concentration of power, this basic structure can be used. Now what are parts of basic structure? Basic structure is not a rigid structure, it is a dynamic and evolving concept. So in Keshwanand Bharti case, Supreme Court has said that some areas are basic structure. Then in second case, like in Minerva Mill case, they added some more feature to basic structure. In Chandra Kumar case, they added some more dimension to basic structure. Basically it is evolving and dynamic concept. So Supreme Court through its various decisions are adding various features of basic structure, like presently supremacy of constitution, parliamentary system, rule of law, judicial review, separation of power, federalism, sovereign democratic republic, limited power of parliament to amend the constitution, secularism, fundamental rights, Article 32, balance between fundamental right and DPSP. These are some of the part of basic structure which are said by Supreme Court of India in its various decisions. So this list is not exhaustive. It will be list will increase with more Supreme Court decisions. So these are part of basic structure. Now, can Parliament destroy the basic structure of Constitution by expanding its amending power, which the question is asking you to discuss? No, Parliament has limited power. Parts of basic structure, now judicial review is part of basic structure. Article 368 is a part of basic structure. Now it cannot be taken away. Judicial review cannot be taken away. Now suppose Indian Parliament enact a law or amend any part of constitution. So Supreme Court always has a power of judicial review. Now judicial review is basic structure, part of basic structure. So it cannot be taken away. So through judicial review, any amendment by Parliament can be reviewed by judiciary, and if it founds unreasonable or unconstitutional, it can be declared null and void by Supreme Court of India. So Supreme Court of India, which is interpreter of Indian Constitution, can use power of its judicial review or judicial activism to review any decision of Parliament about amendment and can declare its unconstitutional and null and void. So you want to say that this Parliament cannot destroy the basic structure. That is, you want to say. In conclusion, you will talk about supremacy of Constitution. So no organ of the government should be given absolute power. Constitution is supreme, and it is being said in preamble of India as well, preamble of Constitution as well. So how you have written answer? First part, you write three things. The question is asking about Article 368. It is talking about basic structure, and it is talking about misuse of basic structure. So in introduction you talked about Article 368. What is Article 368? Various amendment which were misused by Parliament, and what is basic structure. That will be your introduction. Main part you will talk about how there was evolution of basic structure, what is significance of basic structure, what is parts of basic structure. In next part you talked about, can Parliament destroy basic structure? No, it cannot destroy, because judicial review is part of basic structure. Now even if Parliament does anything like that, judiciary can always use its power of judicial review to revert that decision or to declare that particular decision as unconstitutional and null and void. In this way we have attempted three questions. Now moving forward, next question is about Attorney General. The Attorney General is the chief legal advisor and lawyer of the Government of India. You have to discuss this. Now it is quite an easy question, 15 marker. The Attorney General of India is chief legal advisor and lawyer of India. The statement is given. You have to discuss this statement. So in introduction you will talk about Attorney General of India, Office of Attorney General of India, who appoints, what is tenure, what is qualification of Attorney General of India. In main part of the answer you will talk about how Attorney General India is a chief legal advisor and how he is a lawyer of Government of India. some other right and privileges, and what are the limitations. This will be discussed in main part of the answer. So introduction, Office of Attorney General of India is provided by Article 76. Now mentioning article is very important in polity, because to write polity answer you have to use language of polity. To write, now what is language of polity? Articles, fundamental right, DPSPs, amendments, parts, schedules. These are language of polity. Suppose you are writing economy answer, so you have to write your answer in language of economy. What is language of economy? Data, fact, schemes, committees, committee recommendation, and other areas. So if you are talking about writing IR answer, you have to write your answer in language of international relations. So in that way you write your answers and you fetch good marks. So Office of Attorney General, Article 76. Whenever you find any scope of writing article, write article who appoint by President of India. Tenure is during the pleasure of President. Now there is no fixed tenure of Attorney General. He will remain in office till the pleasure of President. Qualification, qualified to be appointed as a judge of Supreme Court. So a person who is qualified to be appointed as judge of Supreme Court can be appointed as Attorney General of India. These are some of the basics we all know about Attorney General of India. So you can start your introduction like this. Now since question is entirely static, so you can write your introduction like this way. In main part of the essay, he is asking you that he Attorney General is chief legal advisor and lawyer. So in main part you will write how Attorney General acts as a chief legal advisor. Then you will talk about how he acts as a lawyer. So chief legal advisor, because he is having advisory role to give advice to Government of India on legal matters which are referred to him by President. So whatever matters referred to Attorney General by President of India, the advice are tendered by him to Government of India. So advisory role. Also, he perform other duties of legal character that are assigned to him by President of India. So whatever other duty assigned to him, he perform those duty to discharge the function conferred on him by constitution or any other law. So basically, is a legal advisor, he is advising Government of India. He is performing other duties which are assigned by President. He is performing other functions which are assigned to him by Constitution of India or any other laws. So in this manner he is acting as a legal advisor. Now how he is a lawyer? Second part of the question. So article 143. Now again here you found a scope of writing a article. So mention that article. Article 143 is saying that Attorney General of India, he represents Government of India in any reference made by President to the Supreme Court. So he represents Government of India. He also appears in Supreme Court and High Court on behalf of Government of India. So in this way he acts as a lawyer. Now don't forget to mention Article 143. What are some rights and privileges of Attorney General? He has right of an audience in all courts of India in any part of India. So he can present in court as an audience. There are some privileges and immunities. So he enjoys same privileges and immunities as enjoyed by a member of parliament. There are some limitations on his power as well. He is not a government servant. He is not a full-time counsel of Government of India. He should not advise or hold a brief against Government of India. He should not defend an accused person in criminal prosecution without permission of Government of India. These are some of the limitations. Now what is permitted? He can do private legal practice. Conclusion, you will write that there are certain duties, power and limitation on Attorney General of India. There is also a separate law minister in India which is primary functionary in sphere of law. So how you have written your answer? You have written introduction where you talked about basics of Attorney General of India, including his office, how he is appointed, what is his tenure, what is his qualification. These are some basic in introduction. In main part, you are talking how he is acting as a chief legal advisor, how he is acting as a lawyer, what are his rights and privileges, what are his limitations. So as a lawyer or as a legal advisor, he is advising Government of India. He is also performing other duties of legal nature which are assigned to him by President of India. He is performing other duties which are assigned to him by Constitution of India or other laws. As a lawyer, he is representing Government of India in various courts including Supreme Court and High Court. He has got certain right and privileges like right of audience in any court of India, same right and privileges as member of parliament. Limitations, he is not a government servant, he is not a full-time counsel, he cannot advise against Government of India, he cannot defend an accused person before taking permission. If permission is given, he can defend. Now he is permitted to have do private legal practice. And conclusion, duties, power and limitations, and there is a separate law minister which is key sphere in legal matters. You can join my Telegram channel unacademy_Ashpal so that you get notification of all my classes. Use my code AJ01 to take 10% off on Unacademy subscription. Now moving forward, question number 19. The long sustained image of India as a leader of oppressed and marginalized nations has disappeared on account of its newfound role in emerging global order. Elaborate. 15 marker question. So question is saying that traditionally India has an image of a voice of marginal nations, nations like least development countries, third world nations. Now presently it is performing new role. So it wants to say that traditionally India has been a voice of these countries, but presently its priorities has been changed. So you have to elaborate this particular statement. So introduction, since question is asking that traditionally India has played a role of becoming voice to poor nations, least developing countries, third world nations. So introduction will talk about how India has performed in past. So India has a long tradition of supporting the cause of oppressed and marginalized nations. For example, in Cold War time, in non-aligned movement, in World Trade Organization, in United Nations reform, also helping neighborhood countries. So we were always there to help poor, marginalized nation, least development countries, and third world nations through various examples. Like in Cold War time, there was non-aligned movement. In WTO, India always fought for in favor of developing nations. In United Nations security reform, we became a voice of these countries. We also help. We are having a tradition of helping our neighborhood countries. In main part of the essay, whatever you have written in introduction, you will do expansion of it. So India's support to oppressed and marginalized nations, so against imperialism and colonialism, since we ourselves are victim of imperialism and colonialism. So in all sphere, in all countries, wherever there was imperialism and colonialism, we helped all such poor and least development countries, be it South Africa, our neighbors. So we always oppose imperialism and colonialism in support of marginal nations. Also, in non-aligned movement, we played a prominent role. We were a founder member of non-aligned movement. It was set up in 1961. We were an active member. We gave Panchsheel principle. What is non-aligned movement? During Cold War time, there were two power blocks, USA and USSR. Either countries were joining USA or USSR. So there become two power centers. Now some countries, including India, they decided neither we should join USA or USSR. We will remain independent, and we will have our Panchsheel principle. So in this way, non-aligned movement was found, and India was active member. Jawaharlal Nehru played a prominent role in shaping non-aligned movement. Also in WTO, in World Trade Organization, time and again we have played, or we have become a voice of developing nations. Like for early conclusion of Doha Development Agenda, there was delay in conclusion of Doha Development Agenda. So India always raised its voice in favor of developing nations that we should conclude this Doha Development Agenda as early as possible. India also fought for agriculture subsidies. So these two examples can be taken from WTO. In climate negotiation, we always advocated for common but differential responsibilities. Now what is common but differential responsibility? That responsibility is common, but it should be differentiated, because those country like developed nations and developing nations, they have to pay more, and these country they have to pay less. There should be more target for this country. There should be less target for developing nations. Why? Because industrial revolution took place in these nations, in developed nations, in European countries. We are in this stage of development now. So on the basis of polluter pay principle, there is larger share of responsibility of developed nation. So that is common but differential responsibility. So in climate negotiation, time and again India has always favored developing nations. Finance and support to least development countries, India always raised its voice. also helping third world nations. In United Nations, about reforming United Nations Security Council and permanent membership, so that we can have representative of developing nations. So India always raised its voice in reforming United Nations Security Council, in meeting agenda and summit of United Nations. Time and again we have always supported developing and third world nations. India has a tradition of supporting its neighborhood countries. For example, Bhutan we have always helped. We have India and Bhutan Treaty of 1949. Nepal, we have India-Nepal Treaty of Peace and Friendship. Now, from where this data are coming? Again, from these are coming from your IR notes. So, in relation between India and Bhutan, you will write all important facts, data, treaty. So, you might have compiled Bhutan India Treaty of 1949 because it is an important treaty. Similarly, relation between India and Nepal, India Nepal Treaty of Peace and Friendship 1950. So, if you are making these kind of notes, this data can be readily used in your answer, and then they refine your answers. With Bangladesh, we supported 1971 war. Sri Lanka, we have supported. Afghanistan, various development projects are being conducted or being taken by India in Afghanistan as well. So we are helping developing and developed nations. We are helping developing nations and poor nations. Now, why? What is India's changing approach? Because we are focusing on our economic development. That is our main priority. We want to make India a 5 trillion economy. So that is our priority. Our bilateral relation with developed nations like USA, Japan, leading players like China, Russia and Australia, we are focusing in these bilateral relations. We are net security provider in Indo-Pacific region. We are member of Quad group. So because of our changed priorities, we are giving lesser attention towards poor and third world countries. That is the core of your answer. Now we are also giving less focus on regional grouping like SARC minus Pakistan, because Pakistan is interrupting the negotiation of SARC time and again. So we have decided to move ahead SARC minus Pakistan. BIMSTEC is uh, not much successful. IBSA summits are also not regular. So these regional groups are not yielding much result to India. Instead, we are focusing on groups like Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, New Development Bank, and G20. In these groups, more members are either fast developing nations or developed nations. Also, we want permanent membership of United Nations Security Council. So, we want support of developed nations. So, due to our change priorities, we are having lesser attention towards, we are giving lesser attention towards these poor countries. Now you will conclude. So you will say that whenever possible with India, we are helping African nations like India Africa Forum Summit. We are WTO, peace clause, CBDR, terrorism. So we are also not entirely neglecting poor countries. Whenever and wherever possible, we are helping them. Basically, our international relation approach is now based on realism rather than based on idealism. We are prioritizing our national interest. What is our national interest? Development. In this way you can conclude your answer. So what you have written in introduction, you have written that we have a long tradition of supporting poor countries, and you gave some examples. In main part you will write how India has supported poor countries. So against colonialism, first non-aligned movement was set up by India and few of other founding members. We played a prominent role in WTO negotiation. Time and again we have raised a voice of poor countries, like in Doha Development Agenda, agriculture subsidies. In climate negotiation, again we are supporting CBDR. In United Nations reform, we want to become voice of developing nations. We are helping our neighborhood countries like Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Afghanistan. These are either poor countries or developing countries. Now why India's approach has been changed? Because our priorities has been changed. We are focusing on 5 trillion economy. We are focusing on bilateral relation with some of the developing nation, major developing nations or developed nations. We are net security provider in India Indo-Pacific. Recently we have joined Quad group. Regional groups we are not able to give much attention. Our focus on other groups, and at the end you will conclude with writing that we are helping African countries, and whenever and wherever possible our foreign policies currently we are focusing on realism rather than on idealism, and we are prioritizing our national interest. In this way you can conclude your answer. So I hope this class was useful to you. Join my Telegram channel unacademy_ashpal. Use code AJ01 to get 10% off. Please like the class. Thank you very much.